Get ready to take a flamethrower to the official narrative and learn what the elites don't want you to know. You're listening to The Tom Woods Show.
Hey everybody, Tom Woods here. It's episode 2603 of The Tom Woods Show. We are joined by the amazing, the great Dominic Frisby, who is not in the UK at the moment. He's actually in California, hence the lovely background we see on his side of the screen. I am always flummoxed when it comes time to introduce Dominic Frisby, so I'll just tell you, he does everything in the world, and he knows everything in the world. He has every talent known to man, along with more charm and interesting conversation you could possibly expect all in one person. But here he is to talk to us. First of all, you have a couple of Substacks, but first of all, where do you direct people? They want to know about Dominic Frisby. I want to get that out of the way.
The problem with being a jack of all trades and a master of none, Tom, is that people want you for one thing. And there are some people who want me as for my sort of financial and social commentary, in which case you should go to theflyingfrisby.com.
And that's Frisby, F-R-I-S-B-Y.
F-R-I-S-B-Y, yeah. Not like the flying disc. It means, Frisby means village of the people from the Frisian Islands, which are islands off the coast of Germany and Holland. So people who want me for that should go to theflyingfrisby.com, and people who want me for my unacceptable libertarian-themed comedy songs, and among my many fans, I can include Elon Musk, should go to frisbees.news. Okay,
that's a good one, frisbees.news. All right, we're talking about something pretty disturbing today, and at least for a chunk of the episode here. And although we are not going to be probably discussing anything in great detail, nevertheless, I would urge people that although most of the time, I dare say pretty much all the time, when you listen to the Tom Woods Show in the car and you have kids in the car, you don't have to worry about a thing. They're not going to learn any new words. They might learn some new vocabulary, but that just means like they'll just learn advanced smart people vocabulary. That's all we mean by that. But in this case, the subject matter is such that if you have kids in the car, you got to switch to another episode, because we're talking about this terrible crime that surely you're familiar with and have heard about, committed by what might justifiably be called, frankly, rape gangs in the UK. And Dominic is involved in a project that has contributed to spreading the word about it, but also helping people recognize just how horrific it was. And it's precisely those details that I would refer you to Dominic's project if for the full details, but we just cannot reproduce this on the show. But can you start us off, Dominic, by setting the stage? What time frame are we talking about when all this occurred, and what are the circumstances?
Well, this is one of the things I've learned as a result of doing this project, is that it has been going on, Tom, since the 1950s.
How is that possible? It's that far?
Yeah. And but in the 19th, so the first wave of immigrants came to the UK after the Second World War. And in this case, you know, it makes me very uncomfortable just saying this, but this is a peculiarly, a crime mostly peculiar to Pakistani Muslims. And there was a large influx of these people in the 1950s. And it involves the grooming and raping of young white girls. And in some cases, these girls were as young as 11. And it was common for them to be aged 12 and 13. And the age of consent in the UK is 16. And I think it is in the States as well. And so, because, you know, this was... There are so many reasons, but authorities turned a blind eye to it in the 50s. And it was just here and there. It wasn't everywhere in the 50s. It was just here and there. But because they turned a blind eye to it, it was able to grow and grow. And by the 90s and the noughties and the tweenies, it reached industrial scale. Industrial scale. It was, and these men would groom young girls, and they would do some of the most graphic and horrible things to them. And it's only as a result of this project that I have learned just how awful some of this stuff is, and is so awful you cannot repeat it on air. It is that bad.
Yeah, that was what. So I got a transcript. Well, let's talk in a minute about the video.
Yeah. Well, I'll come to the video. So, but I did some maths. Okay. So the project that I was involved in is a project organized by this Irish filmmaker called Felim McAleer, I should say. And what he does is he takes he creates podcasts and films, but only uses the actual words as they were.
Yeah.
And so in this case, I had to read out a judge's sentencing, and these were the actual words of the judge. And it's a 45-minute film, and I'm just sitting there playing the judge, reading out this sentencing. But in reading out this sentencing, you discover some of the most graphic and horrific stories you will ever hear in your life. And I was sat there playing this judge and reading it out and kind of going, this is not possible that one human being could do this to another. But here's the terrifying thing, is the authorities turned a blind eye to it. And we know that in the 90s and the noughties, when I say the authorities, I mean the police, politicians, the media, social workers, the authorities. And the reason that they turned a blind eye to it is that, broadly speaking, they were all terrified of being called racist. And their fear of, and because this whole thing went totally against the pro-multicultural narrative that pervaded at the times. And so it was, rather than say, look, this industrial scale rape of young working class white girls is happening, rather than admit to it and confront it and put the perpetrators in prison, the authorities chose to ignore the girls. They threw our own children under the bus. And it's one of them, the crimes committed are on a scale of 1 to 10, somewhere near 15. But the next level of crime is the failure of the authorities to address it and deal with it and protect their own people. And it's terrible. But I worked out that we did a broad calculation, and I haven't looked at the figures just before the call, so I'm going to get it slightly wrong. But in one town, Rotherham, they worked out that in a 12-year period, there were 1,600 victims. Now, we know that this took place in more than 50 towns across the country, and we know that even though it goes back to the 1950s, it was because it was ignored that it grew to an industrial scale. So it only reached sort of industrial scale, late 90s, noughties, and tweenies, between, say, 95 and 2020. It's still going on now. But in that 12-year period, there were 1,600 victims in one town. So if you say, okay, well, that was a 12-year period, so over a 24-year period, it was 3,000 victims in one town. And then you go, but this was happening at as many as 50 or 100 towns across the UK. Well, then you multiply 50 or 100 times 3,000, and you're looking at numbers in the hundreds of thousands. It means that hundreds of thousands of girls were raped by these gangs.
This is inconceivable.
It is inconceivable.
There are no consequences for anybody.
It's not just it's not just like they were raped by the perpetrators. They were then sold. The perpetrators then sold the girls as prostitutes to their friends and colleagues. And in the course of doing all this, some of the most brutal sexual acts were committed that you can imagine. They were injected with heroin, with crack. They were given alcohol. anything to make them do this. Their entire childhoods were ruined. They were separated from their families, and then the authorities did not believe them. And it's only because Elon Musk somehow or other has got wind of this story and has got a real bee in his bonnet about it. And Elon Musk is not scared of anyone, and he does not care who he pisses off. And Nassim Taleb used to talk about FU money. Well, to be so wealthy that you no longer care who you upset, and so you got FU money. Well, has Elon Musk got FU money? And so he just suddenly got a bee in a bonnet. And many of us have been talking about this for years, and we've all but given up. I wrote a song about Brexit called 17 Million F-Offs, and it got into the charts, and there was a big campaign to get it to number one. And I gave all the money to a charity called the Maggie Oliver Foundation, which helps the victims of these crimes. And even on the Wikipedia entry about that song, they said everything about the song, but they ignored the fact that I gave all the profits to this charity, just on Wikipedia. And this kind of just omission was across the entire media, across the entire country. I remember saying to my two eldest kids, and this would have been 2015, 2016, about these gangs, and they were going, no, it's not true. And I was going, it is true. And you're getting taxis late at night. You need to watch who you talk to and watch what goes on. And in fact, my son's girlfriend, if she's hopefully going to be my daughter-in-law, was in a taxi with one of these guys, and he offered her some water. Would you like a drink of water? She said, yes. And then the next thing she knows, it's some kind of drug, and she's passing out and she's all over the place. Unfortunately, her friends took care of her. And this was in London. This wasn't in one of the northern towns. And it was happening in the depressed northern towns, Rochdale and Rotherham. But it happened in places like Oxford, the heart of cultured England, Oxford. And it's just incredible that it was able to go on. And it's also incredible the scale to which people were blinkered about it.
Well, what I was going to say about the video with you as the judge is that I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll download this video, I'll generate a transcript, and I'll read it over, and then we'll take bits and pieces and discuss them. And then when I got you on the line here and we started talking before recording, we both agreed that it's basically impossible to read this.
You can't. It's too graphic.
Yeah.
Like if you went on one of those, like if somebody posted that on one of the Pornhub or something, the authorities would come up. They would, this is like the darkest realms of the dark net. And even then people would be going, I mean, it is, and I'm talking about the actual, not the consequences and the things, they were injected with drugs and so on, the actual things they were made to do. At the age of 12, it is like, I think if I was to do it at 55, I'd be scarred for life. But a 12-year-old, it's unbelievable.
Well, I want to go back to something you just said, because I guess I didn't realize it myself. Are you saying that Elon Musk's attention to this topic is what has actually brought it into the public consciousness?
It was talked about, but Elon Musk made it, he put it on the headlines. And even now the BBC's like, it's far right Elon Musk or something. I'm sorry, there is no, you can't hide from this one, no matter how progressive you are.
But yet it sounds like that's exactly what they're trying to do. Now, we heard over here that there was a vote not to open an investigation into this. So was there more to that?
I don't know the details of it, but yeah, there was supposed to be an inquiry, and Keir Starmer vetoed it. And Keir Starmer, when this was all going on, Keir Starmer was Director of Public Prosecutions, and so he really has been smeared with this brush. Although, I don't know the actual details of it because it's all detailed in legal niceties. But he isn't quite the villain that he was made out to be. But it's also an example of how stupid this Labour government is. Because if you think, it's the most unpopular government in history, it's even more unpopular than the previous administration was. And you think, well, if there's one way that you can restore your integrity and restore your popularity, it's with a cause like this, where the victims are 12-year-old girls. And yet
everyone's on your side. Everybody wants this.
Like literally everyone. Like even most Pakistani Muslims are not on the side of the Pakistani Muslims. And it raises so many questions about multiculturalism, because like, if let's say you grow up in a village and you're the policeman in the village, and you know, everyone's roughly had the same education, the same culture, and you know the wrong uns, and it's kind of easy to police. But when you're policing people from another culture, their names are difficult, they speak a different language, their loyalty is not to the host country, but it's to their own people. There's a massive cover-up thing going on there. And a lot of the time, I don't think it was even fear of being called racist. It's just easier to turn a blind eye to it, because it's difficult to police a different culture. And it exposes the practical difficulties of multiculturalism. And all the indigenous English white people are just going, well, it's two tiers. It's a two-tiered society. It's one rule for them, one rule for us. And they're totally justified in that complaint, because it is.
All right, we get it. We're supposed to buy gold and silver. But when you do, why just let your gold and silver sit there like lazy bums? My own gold and silver is a little more ambitious than that. While everybody else's gold and silver is just sitting around, mine is earning me interest, paid in more gold and silver, thanks to my account at Monetary Metals, which I have had for about 2 years. Monetary Metals is revolutionizing how to invest in precious metals while gold prices continue to increase in value. Join thousands of investors all over the world who earn interest on gold and silver every month with Monetary Metals. Not only can you store your gold safely for free, but you can earn 2% to 4% on your gold, paid in more ounces of physical metal in their gold lease offerings. Our old friend Jeff Deist, in fact, formerly at the Mises Institute, is now with Monetary Metals. Go to monetary-metals.com/woods to learn more. That's monetary-metals.com/woods. If what you're saying is true, then so many levels of society over there are in one way or another implicated in this.
Yeah.
If not in direct commission of the crimes, then in covering them up, or creating an environment in which it's impossible for anybody to have a rational conversation about it. When initially Elon Musk started talking about this, the initial attempt by progressives was to try to play the racist card again. Mm-hmm. And you just can't do that now. You can't.
Play the man, not the ball.
But no normal person is going to respond favorably to that.
I know. I mean, Elon Musk is doing more to sort this country out than anyone, because of the influence of that platform, and because of the free speech on that platform.
But they treat him over there, at least the powers that be, treat him like, I don't know, like Hitler or something. And
he's an embarrassment, because he's
not responsible for this.
No.
It's not his fault.
No. All he's done is seen a wrong and highlighted it.
I can't get over that. So is there really nothing's going to happen?
Oh, it's plans are afoot. He's come to the defense of Tommy Robinson, who's like one of the biggest champions of this cause. But Tommy Robinson, just for contempt of court, is currently in solitary confinement. Meanwhile, many of the perpetrators of these crimes, they were let out after 2 or 3 years. And so the young girl would be walking down the street, and she'd suddenly walk into the guy that had done these crimes on her. It's just like, this. I tell you, Tom, like, I could list out, in the States, you've got a perception of Britain as being like Downton Abbey or something like that. And once upon a time, Britain was like that. But unfortunately, all the inheritance tax that came in the post-war era destroyed all those families. And so they no longer live, that Britain, Downton Abbey, Brideshead Revisited, whatever, that is gone. And, like, we're now London is the knife crime capital of the world. We're the rape gang capital of the world. We have 65 million people. It's thought there are 1 million people out of 65. So 1 in 65 people are here illegally. Not even a legal migrant, an illegal migrant. 1 in 65. We have, like, here's one for you. This one makes me laugh because it's so insane. But we have enough natural gas in the UK to provide our own energy. And we can frack on the ground, and then we have the North Sea. But because environmentalists then decided, do you know what, fracking's really bad, so they banned all fracking in the UK, and then they decided that they were going to stop any development of oil in the North Sea and oil and gas in the North Sea, because they just put a blanket ban on any development. And so instead, we're a net importer of natural gas. We pay the highest prices for gas in the world. We import some of our gas from the US, where, guess what, it's made by fracking. So the process is the same. And then we've got to pay all the environmental costs and the transport costs of getting it from the North America to here. And then the rest of the gas, the majority of the gas we buy from Norway, which is like our neighbor, which gets it from the North Sea. So why are we paying Norway to get it where we could just get it ourselves? And the result is that the ordinary English person has the highest energy costs or heating costs in the world. It's just nuts. And it's just one thing after another. You know, the city used to be the financial center of the world. And since 2008, it's just meaningless or virtually meaningless. I think the States has had something like 90% GDP growth since 2008, 2009. We've had 12%. So the States has grown by like 6 times more than we have. It's just so stupid. I cannot wait to get, I tell you where we rule the world. We've got more DEI officers, not per capita, more DEI officers than any other country in the world. Not per capita, actual more DEI officers. We, yeah, I could go on. Oh, that's another one. We've got the only country that has a bigger exodus of millionaires than us is China. And China has 20 times more people, and it just beats us in terms of millionaire exodus. We are such a basket case at the moment. And I'm laughing at us. I think it's as bad in France. I think it's as bad in Germany. It's just Western Europe. Talk about fall of empires. It is utterly, it's just totally falling apart. And nothing works. Roads are rubbish, infrastructure, health services, nothing works.
But what's incredible to me is that it hasn't yielded you guys a Trump who's popular enough to get elected.
Well, the closest we have is Nigel Farage.
Right.
And our electoral system is designed such that, you know, even though Reform had something like 15% of the vote in the last election, like they had, I think they got 5 seats out of 650, whereas the SNP, for example, in 2 elections ago was able to get something like 60 seats in Parliament, have 10% of seats in Parliament with like 3 million votes or something. It's you know, it's first past the post. So it's really hard for the system is designed to protect the system, if that makes sense. But we need a Trump, we need an Elon Musk, we need these guys. And I'm optimistic because everything that happens in America happens in the UK. We get a sort of watered down version. And so hopefully it is coming. But Christ, do we need it? Oh my goodness me. But our Trumps are all leaving. They're all going to America and Argentina and Portugal and Dubai and all these places, you know.
And yet it's such a great country. You have a great country, you have a great tradition, you have great people, you know, in your history. And you know, we inherit a lot of...
So much of what is good about America is because of where you came from and what you brought with you.
Yeah.
You know, not least the Constitution, which is basically Magna Carta. You know, it's a British document that when the American citizens rose up and fought for their independence against the British, they actually thought in their heads, they were fighting for the rights enshrined in Magna Carta. It's really sad. It's really sad.
First of all, I'll
tell you what we have got. We got high house prices. We got really high house prices. So no kid can afford a house. So they don't have a family. And then the government goes, oh, we're not reproducing enough. We need to import more people. And so we replace ourselves.
How do people get, I mean, obviously I'll link to it, tomwoods.com/2603 and in the video description, but how do people get this video that you made?
I think put a link to it in the description, but you can see it on Twitter or you can watch it on YouTube. I imagine it's on the other channels as well. But if you just Google Dominic Frisby judge rape gang or something like that, you'll find it. I mean, it's a brutal. It takes a lot of strength to watch it for 45 minutes. I'll say that much.
Yeah, well, it must take a lot of strength to be the one saying the words.
Well, I mean, we all do our little bit. I can't claim to be any kind of hero, but I have to say, even saying the words, you would have to stop and go, did this really happen? I cannot believe it.
Would you say, I mean, I don't really know anything about the evolution of your thinking over time, but would you say that maybe in the past you might have been more optimistic about the prospects of a multicultural society than you are today?
100%. My first wife was mixed race. My two eldest kids are mixed race. We are there. My family is born of multiculturalism, but I'm now of the mind. Goodness me! Just over the camera there, the most beautiful hummingbird just kind of hovered next to the flower and just did a beautiful. It was rather beautiful. Sorry, while I was talking about the failures of multiculturalism, you'd say it's worked in America. I think one of the problem is just the sheer volume of change, and I think it's also if everyone comes from a sort of Christian culture, or if everyone comes from a Muslim culture, or if the sort of the religion, the belief system is similar, then it's okay. But when you've got conflicting belief systems, that doesn't help. But I think you'd have to say that broadly, would you say that multiculturalism has worked in America?
No, not at all. On no level. Okay. The society is in a constant state of civil war, and each group accuses the other group of this, that, and the other thing. There's no prospect of it improving. I mean, for heaven's sake, people are arguing, people are calling each other Nazis for having completely normal opinions, and we're acting like the civil rights movement of the 1960s accomplished nothing at all, like that was all nothing, and the trillions of dollars in wealth transfers are just, we act like they didn't even occur, and there's no sense of gratitude or anything. It's all, we're entitled to more, and there's no prospect of that ending. There's absolutely no prospect of it.
Right, even like every time I read about something that's going on in the States at the moment, the latest Trump measure or the latest Elon Musk thing, I'm like, I'm a bit wary about tariffs, but I get what he's doing with them and how he's using them as a tool. And he's a massive flex, but that aside, everything else that they've done, I'm like, yes, this is brilliant. But even within that, you've got the failures of multiculturalism. You think?
Yeah.
I mean, what about New York? What's new? Like one thing that definitely happens with multiculturalism is you go from a high trust society to a low trust society. Previously people left their doors unlocked and everyone knew everyone. Now people lock their doors, and that in itself is a big thing. Yeah,
there's been legitimate. I realize it's almost an oxymoron to say legitimate social science research, but there actually has on this and on high trust societies and what the ingredients of that are. And then the researchers themselves don't want to publicize it because it gives them the wrong answer. And this is. We've been treated like children long enough, that if we just sit and repeat the same failed slogans over and over, things will improve. But they don't.
Yeah. As I'm getting older, I'm realizing so much of it was slogans. And, you really wanted it to work. And you do go into some places, you go into some towns, and I'm sure you go similar in America, but, like in the north of England and stuff, and you go, we really do need to mix up the gene pool a little bit here. But you do see that, but I guess that can happen naturally, and that doesn't mean, dumping as many people from another culture on that town as there were.
No.
Here's the thing. One of the problems is, one of the things I don't like about the internet is it creates mismatches. So, for example, my friend is this very sweet, very religious Irish lady. And she's from a little town a couple of hours outside Dublin. And she's just terribly courteous, old world, polite. And she bought some Ethereum on Binance. And she had it there. And then she got one of these phone calls from a stranger. And she said, they had such a polite English accent and they were so respectful and they're so nice. And of course, it was a scammer who had her on the phone for ages and stole all of her coins. And she just sort of trusted him because he had a nice English accent. But because she was just this lady from a little village of Ireland, she was just not equipped to deal with whoever this streetwise crook was who took her for a ride. And it's possible on the internet, because of the way the communication is, these mismatches happen all the time. So you'll have some really canny confidence trickster up against an old lady or an old person who's, in the real world, they would have their family around them or something to protect them or the community. But it just doesn't happen on the internet. So it creates these mismatches. And that also happens, I think, with multiculturalism. Because, for example, now we have this problem in the UK where we have a massive influx of Albanians who, because of everything that Albania has been through in its history, communism and all the rest of it, are hard people. They are tough and they are ruthless and they do not care and they have no money and they see Britain and they want a piece of that. And so they just totally wipe the floor with all the existing drug gangs and they just control the whole thing. And there's this thing called county lines. And it starts in the cities, but they go to tiny little villages in the countryside and find bored kids. And they basically either turn them into addicts or they get them into such a situation where they owe them money. And then these kids become their pushers. And then suddenly you've got drugs in these tiny remote country towns. And the locals in these remote country towns with the background they have are just not equipped to come up against the ruthlessness of an Albanian drug gang. It doesn't even matter that it's an Albanian drug gang. It could be a Jamaican drug gang or a Chechen drug gang. It doesn't matter. They're just not equipped because they're just from a tiny little rural village. But it's the way of the world. There are 8 billion people in the world. It's possible almost to go around the world in 24 hours now. Trains, boats, planes, they're all better than they've ever been in the past. Everyone's got a mobile phone. Everyone can see how the other half are living. It's created this enormous FOMO effect, and the whole world is on the move. And until we accept the fact that everyone is moving faster than ever before, and the desire is greater than ever before, because everyone on their phones can see on Instagram how the other half are living, and they want a piece of it. Until we accept the fact that more people than ever are on the move, and they're more able to move, and we go, this is what is happening. We need policies to address this. We need to talk about this. And we without everyone going racist or whatever, until we can even have that conversation, we're doomed because it's just going to carry on. And cultures are being wiped out by it.
Hey everybody, let's take a minute to thank our sponsor, Persist SEO. If you're getting buried by your competition online, then build your brand, your reputation, and your lead flow with digital marketing by Persist SEO. If you're a small local business trying to compete against large companies in the service industry, then increase your visibility with Persist SEO. What if you have low or no leads coming in on a consistent basis? Well, then website search engine and conversion optimization can help move the needle to a more prosperous business model for you. Are you tired of cold calling and networking? Use your website as a lead generation engine. What if you're not showing up for your services in the search engines? Well, get found with Persist SEO Expert Search Engine Optimization. All you have to do is call 770-580-3736 or visit them at ineedseo.help for a free website audit and consultation. That's 770-580-3736 or ineedseo.help. Yeah, so which is why the claims of so-called diversity, I mean, you can't even, every time I hear that word, I'm just filled with contempt because it means the opposite.
And like my ex-girlfriend, who I adore more than ever, she always goes, the problem with you and me is that you're anti-immigration. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I think immigration is inevitable, and I think it's natural and normal to want to move. And some people want to stay where they are, but lots of people want to move. But you can't. If the host country only has 5 million people, it can't just bring in 5 million more people. It has to be, managed, and I don't even want to use the word managed, because that's an awful thing that suggests government planning. But there's only so many you could. I think everyone wants a little bit of immigration because a little bit is nice, but not to the extent that did you know that, for example, white English people have been a minority in London for 25 years now. White English is a minority in London for 25 years. And it's most English cities now that is the case. White English is a minority. And I think outside of England, most people want the English to be English. They like the English and they want England to be England. And that's what England is. And that's gone. Now it's just something else. And that something else might prove to be better. It might prove to be worse, but it is something else. It is not England as we know it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I land in Beijing, I don't want to be greeted by bagpipes. Why would I?
Exactly.
And yet that's what they think of as, quote, diversity, because then that place would be diverse. But what that really means is now that place has no identity at all. It has exactly the same mixture as every other place.
And the same buildings and the same and this and so on. People criticize Japan. And when I go to Japan, I just think it's great. And it's sort of simultaneously the most futuristic country in the world and the most traditional country in the world. And I love Japan. And it wouldn't be Japan if Japan hadn't defended itself in the way that it has, or defended its traditions and its culture.
We all know what would have happened to Japan if there had been the same movements of peoples that we've seen in other countries. We all know what the cities would look like, what the subway would look like, what the culture would be like, what the way people address each other would be like. What the level of civility would be like. We know it. I mean, how no. We have to pretend we don't?
When Japan play in the World Cup football, in the Soccer World Cup, the fans, they all clear up the mess. So they leave the stadium as they found it. They do the thing. They clear up the mess and they go. We have, there's a part of London called New Malden, southwest London, and there's a massive Korean community there. And a few World Cups ago, I think it was, maybe 2000, Korea did really well in the World Cup. They got to the semi-finals. And the Koreans in New Malden just went absolutely nuts, got really drunk, and they totally trashed the village green. The sort of, it's a suburb, so the central area, they trashed it. And the following night, I've got a friend who lives there. He just said there were just loads of people on the green just at night, just really quietly doing something. And I woke up the following morning and they had completely replanted and restored the village green that they'd trust. So they totally took responsibility for what they'd done and tidied up their mess. And they did it discreetly and quietly without asking for any thanks or anything. They just did it.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to have...
If only all migrant cultures behave like that.
It's just crazy. And yet it's like, I would be ashamed.
They were called Asian rape gangs. They were called, like, whenever you go, what's somebody's ethnicity? And they go Asian. And you go, well, wait a minute. Asia is the biggest. Are they Russian? Are they Indian? Are they Indonesian? Are they Japanese? Are they Chinese? Are they Saudi? Are they Kazakhstani? What? It's such a blanket fit. And we know that this wasn't a Korean rape gang or a Japanese rape gang thing, but people wouldn't even dare call it Pakistani rape gang, even though that's what it was. They get angry if you call it Muslim rape gang because not all Muslims are like that, and what they were doing was anti-Muslim. Well, fine, it probably was anti-Muslim, but nevertheless, they were Muslims.
Yeah. So this is where we are. And you're barely allowed to talk about it, but now you're allowed to talk about it to some degree.
Well, it's easy for me because I'm just sat in my mum's back garden in a beautiful setting talking to a like-minded individual. But if if some people watch this interview, I'll probably get lynched. I could not have this conversation speaking as loudly as I am in certain parts of London. I could not have it.
So it seems to me that those people over there who really do want to see justice done, and the people who enabled all this exposed, this has to bring something down. Like, they have got to be unrelenting about this. I mean, every institution in your country that has looked down on people like you and me and talked down to us and done everything possible to make civilized norms a thing of the past needs to be called to account and humiliated. Or what is the point? How can it be otherwise?
I couldn't agree more, Tom. And the problem is in one case, these crimes are still ongoing. So that it needs to be stopped now because it's still happening. And the police need to allocate resources to that rather than policing far-right speech on Twitter or whatever they're wasting their time with. But it's very, very difficult to bring people from the past to account because, again, of these differences in culture. Where do you find them? These crimes took place a long time ago. Where's your evidence? The court system is antiquated. Our legal system is not fit for purpose. It's not equipped to deal with the amount of people it has to process. And, we badly need, we need Elon Musk to come in and just go, this isn't working. We're going to use AI in the legal system here. And it's just rife with leeches and crony capitalism, and everything gets dragged out and nothing can be processed in time. And so it's really common for the police to do a really clever bust and then and catch someone, and then the prosecution fails afterwards because the lawyer didn't do his job or something. And so, our court system isn't fit for purpose. And then in addition to that, our prison system is not fit for purpose. You talk to most solicitors and lawyers who deal with the prisons, it's commonly accepted that they are now controlled by Muslim gangs. And so prisons have become places of radicalization. And so people go to prison and then they leave indoctrinated. And so prison is actually counterproductive. Rather than go into prison and serve your debt to society, they leave a bigger enemy of society than they were when they went in the first place. And then there's one other thing I wanted to say about immigration that calls back to what we were talking about earlier. Many of the crimes, terrorist crimes that are committed by immigrants, are committed by second generation. And I think the wisdom is that for an immigrant family to settle in another country takes 3 generations. The first generation keep a low profile, they get on with the job, with whatever they're doing, but they have kids, and the kids don't feel part of the new country, but they also don't feel part of the country that they came from. And so they feel a little bit lost and a little bit alienated. And if you look at the statistics of terrorist activity within the UK, a lot of the time it's committed by second generation, the large majority of the time. And then by the time of the third and fourth generation, you have some kind of integration. So, 3 generations, that's 100 years. That's a long time to assimilate,
Well, tell me again what people should do to find your video, because you're in effect, it's like you're reenacting
we filmed it in a court. I wore a judge's outfit. I spoke in my best English voice, and I read out the sentencing. And it takes probably 10 minutes to get. It's 10 minutes of, if I was a screenwriter, I would have got on with it quicker. But once you get about 15 minutes in, some of the incidences, when they go into the specifics of what happened, it is some of the most brutal stuff you will ever hear in your life. And I said to the guys who made the film, you should clip that and put that up on the internet and get people to, because that will get you millions of hits. But it was so graphic, they wouldn't do it. And I don't blame them.
Yeah. But I'll link to it again, tomwoods.com/2603, and also in the video description for those of you watching video. Well, I like to end our conversations on an up note here, but it's a little bit difficult in this case. But I guess the small consolation is that it's looking like I will have a chance to see you while you're visiting the United States, and that is something very good indeed.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. My mum lives in Palm Springs in California, which is like every time you come to Palm Springs, you feel like you're on holiday, and it's just the most magical place. And then I'm going to Florida for a week next week, to Naples, filming something down in Naples, and then I might have a bit of time after that. And if I can, I'm coming up to Orlando to see Tom Woods.
Well, that will be a tremendous time, and we'll see if we can, get you fed a good meal, and we'll make it worth your while.
Lots of protein.
Oh, well, you don't have to worry about that. My wife's on carnivore right now, so
oh, brilliant.
No shortage of that. Well, thank you very much, Dom, for this difficult episode. I appreciate it.
Not at all, Tom. And I love doing your show, and I love what you do, and you're a hero for the cause, and it's a pleasure to talk to you.
You're very kind to say that. Thank you. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Make yourself and those you love less vulnerable to the regime, both mentally and physically. Get more forbidden information at tomsfreebooks.com, and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. See you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.